Hey guys, so I'm back with another story. This one is again from Reddit. The same tag is called No Sleep. This one is by a user named DarlingBird1. It's entitled, "Did you hear about what happened to Ada Taylor?" I'm guessing you are familiar with Bloody Mary, with the Hook Man, with the Vanishing Hitchhiker. Maybe you've got local variants. Our local and very gory variant is Ada Taylor. Everyone who has ever seen Ada Taylor has died horribly. Except me. And do you know what? I don't think this is delayed horror. I don't think this is the nail-biting tension point before I'm eviscerated in front of a shocked audience. I think I have survived an urban legend. And I'm here to tell you, Ada Taylor is innocent. Let me give you a bit of background. I've done a lot of research into this. I still can't quite believe I'm alive, after all. So I've got a fair bit of background for you. My local area is divided approximately into 1. The bougie, nice part where people move their families to enjoy farmers markets in the churchyard every Saturday, and 2. The part where I live. The two parts are connected by St. Thomas Road. If you believe the real estate spiel, St. Thomas Road is a particularly fine example of Georgian architecture, featuring 12 terraced red brick houses with bold white rectangular windows, recently modernized and renovated throughout following a period of non-habitation. Everyone in the local area, however, knows that those 12 houses were the St. Thomas's almshouses, and the reason they've stood empty for so long is that they are haunted by Ada Taylor. The almshouses were built in 1776 to house the local orphans and unmarried women. They were run by nuns. By all accounts, the almshouses were a good thing. They kept the women and children from turning to begging, crime, or prostitution. They provided shelter, meager but sufficient meals, and an education for the young ones, albeit limited to the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and the 10 Commandments. There wasn't a problem with the almshouses for nearly 100 years. Ada Taylor arrived in June 1874. She was 17 years old. 5 months after her arrival, Ada Taylor, an unmarried girl sheltered by the charity of the church and good Victorian Moors, a plain, small, clean person of sound morals and Christian piety, was pregnant. 6 months after her arrival, Ada Taylor was dead. It was December. There had been thick snow on the day before Ada Taylor was found, thick enough that it muffled sound. It would have muffled the footprints of whoever walked up behind her. Those were visible in the snow. It even managed to muffle her screams, but it highlighted the bright crimson pool of blood Ada Taylor's corpse was found in. I'm hesitant to tell you what had happened to her because I don't want this to turn into gore porn for Jack the Ripper enthusiasts, so I'll briefly say she was slit from collarbone to pelvis, and her womb, her pregnant womb, was missing, and her eyes had been gouged out. Ada Taylor, pregnant out of wedlock, was buried in a pauper's grave. The nuns petitioned to have her buried in consecrated ground, in the very same churchyard that there is now a farmer's market, but the church refused. Ada Taylor's killer was never found, so it was perhaps no surprise when, for 3 Decembers after her miserable death, 3 more women were found dead on St. Thomas Road of the same injuries. Same footsteps, same gruesome hysterectomy, same blinding. People started to move out of the almshouses. Better dirt poor than dead, after all. The nuns did their best, but eventually the church, fearing for their safety, pulled their funding and sent the nuns to different places. St. Thomas's almshouses were finally closed in 1882, by which time they had been turned over to a local landlord who had indiscriminately overfilled them, left his tenants in slum conditions, and ignored a further December murder. They stood empty until February 1917, when they were converted into an army hospital. 1 dead, eviscerated nurse later, December 1917, and the hospital moved en masse to the church. Empty again until they were turned into emergency housing in 1940 during the Blitz, and guess what? Another poor woman, another murder. By this time, things were getting weird. Surely the original killer would already be dead, but so many people died during the wars, no one thought to question it. The houses stayed open through the war and afterwards. After the 1940 murder, there weren't any more until 1955, another renovation, to keep up with the mid-century boom. This time, the woman in question, Francine Bold, a typist and trainee illustrator, didn't receive the full cut. Her incision ended at her sternum, though her eyes were gone. Before she died, Not of a haunting, but tragically of sepsis contracted at the hospital, she told the officers investigating the case that she had been walking up St. Thomas Road on her way to a friend's house, and she had seen, at the other end, the figure of a small, slim woman in an old-fashioned dress the color of dishwater, a bonnet, and a gaping wound visible through a ragged slit down the front of her clothes. Ada Taylor. Francine's testimony was confused, delirious with pain, grief, and, as the hospital found out too late, the fever caused by the sepsis. She had said that the grotesque little figure had come lurching toward her, arms outstretched, twiggy fingers hungrily grasping the air. She claimed to have seen the holes where the eyes should have been, raw and serrated like minced meat. She apparently saw the intestines in the woman's body bounce and unspool through the slit as she ran, and the other woman slipped on a lump of viscera, giving Francine time to turn and flee. But Ada Taylor was dead, and that meant her appearance was supernatural. Francine ran into the arms of an awful, vengeful being that grabbed her throat, gouged her eyes, and began the slitting. She said at the same time as she was undergoing this awful torture, there was something clawing at her from behind, too, scratching at her arms. Ada Taylor attacking from all angles. After Francine's death, the urban legend began in earnest. Ada Taylor was mad for revenge. Someone had taken her sinful, out-of-wedlock offspring, and now she was out for women with working wombs. Ada Taylor would never look at her little baby, and so she wanted to make sure no other woman would look at theirs. Ada Taylor was a monster. The 1955 renovations ground to a halt after Francine's death, and work didn't begin again until the 1975 recession. You guess what happened after that? Another murder. And since that murder, no one has been stupid enough to try and render St. Thomas Road fit for habitation. But, as you've probably spotted, we're in the middle of a housing crisis. St. Thomas Road has been renovated and is up for sale. I was walking along St. Thomas Road last night. Like Francine Bold, I was off to visit a friend who lived in the nice part of the area. December has been mild here, no snow, and on the night I was walking down the road, it was even warm enough for me to wear my heavy coat open. There were no stars in the sky because of the light pollution, but St. Thomas Road is darker than the surrounded roads because it is fenced in by bigger housing developments on all sides, and there isn't quite enough room for street lamps all the way down. You get one at the entrance and one at the exit. This was why, when I saw a figure at the far end of the road, I didn't immediately panic. Actually, my first instinct was to prepare a joke for my friend, i.e., that I couldn't believe someone was taking a walk in the dark to my half of the postcode. They must have really wanted some fried chicken from the chicken shop. In fact, I kept walking briskly until I got to the 6th house, which has been renovated in the most horrible modern way. The red brick has been almost entirely replaced with glass. It was supposed to look contemporary, and it looks gross. I pity whoever lives there because it's going to be like living in a mirror. That's when it occurred to me to wonder why the figure at the other end of the road hadn't moved yet. I stopped. I stared. I took in the details. Ada Taylor started to move towards me. Francine Bold had been right. She was spilling out of the front of her body. She looked like a doll who had its stuffing ripped out by a sadistic child. Her face. I don't want to talk about her face. The empty sockets were awful, but the mouth was worse. It was locked in an open-mouthed, silent wail. I'd say that if there were still eyes in that head, they would have been weeping. I think Ada Taylor was coming towards me, crying silently. I was so terrified I didn't even run. I just stumbled backwards. That stumble saved my life. Just momentarily, I looked towards the glass-fronted monstrosity that was the 6 Psalms house. There was someone behind me, tall, made taller by a top hat, a black cloak, a face hidden in shadow, dark trousers, a man dressed in the height of Victorian fashion, save for the knife he held in his hand. Ada Taylor was moving closer now. At this distance I could hear her gurgling frantically, and I could see what Francine saw, those flexing, desperate fingers. I did what any sensible person would do in the circumstances. I fainted. I came round in a hospital room. Apparently I'd given myself quite a knock to the head on my way down to the pavement, and I'd be out for several hours. My friend, concerned I hadn't turned up, tried to call my phone, and when I didn't answer, called my housemate, who confirmed I left the house. She came out looking for me and found me. I still have my eyes. I still have my womb. I am, apart from a very mild concussion, entirely uninjured. I've thought a lot about the legend of Ada Taylor since last night, and one thing that has bothered me is a very major plot hole that has gone unquestioned since 1874. Ada Taylor was pregnant, but women don't get pregnant all by themselves. Come to that, they don't even have to consent to the sex they're having to wind up pregnant. When Ada Taylor was discovered to be with child, it was treated as a sin. But what if the sin wasn't hers at all? And I think, too, of Ada Taylor's crying face, her flexing fingers, the scrabbling that Francine felt at her back as she was attacked from the front. I don't think Ada Taylor was trying to hurt her. I think she was trying to warn her, grab her, save her. Ada Taylor isn't coming back from the dead to take her revenge. Ada Taylor is dragging herself up from her eternal rest to return to her poor, broken body in a desperate attempt to stop what happened to her happening to anyone else. If I had turned and met the figure behind me, I think it would have happened to me too. There's a murderous ghost out there, all right, and I don't know who or even what he is. And I don't know what part he's played in Ada's life or why he keeps coming back. But I do know one thing. Ada Taylor is innocent. Alright, well, that's the end of that one. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.